Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Ramirez. I'm an Associate State Director for AARP. Thank you all for joining us. Uh, we're looking forward to having a great program, and I just want to do some just really quick housekeeping things. Um, Again, we're going to be focused today on our great conversation that we're having with CivSalon and AARP with our featured guest, Joni Yung. So before we do that, we're going to use the chat box in the Zoom feature to have pose any questions that you have for Joni today, or any additional questions that you might have. And so if you look at your right-hand side, you will be able to see the chat feature. So we'll be able to ask questions, have plenty of time for the end for any questions that you might have. And so we're going to do these lunchtime CivSalons every 2 weeks. So thank you for joining our first one. And so hopefully you'll come back and love this one so much that you'll come for our other two. We'll feature other Angelinos again that are going to be able to talk to us a little bit how they've been connected, reconnected, or connected through the pandemic with the outdoors and the things that they're very passionate about. So with that, I want to be able to turn it over to Tafarai Bain, who is the Chief Strategist with CivSalon, who's going to introduce our featured guest today. Again, thank you for joining us.
Hey everyone, my name is Tafarai again. Really happy to have everyone here join us. We're excited to host these CivSalon events. We've been doing, CivSalon does these, we don't normally do them in person, but we're excited to do them virtually, and for this lunch series over the next month. We're really happy to work with AARP, one of our favorite sponsors of our events. And today we are really excited to have a person who I know from both the community in Los Angeles, but also she's been an active participant in our CivSalon events for years, as well as an online sort of maven and star on social media. We're really happy to have Joni Yung today join us. Hi, Joni. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Tafara. It's nice to be here. Thank you, too, for asking me to join you. And I get to be the guinea pig. I get to be the first one. So this is going to be fun.
Yeah, you're our first one. I'm really excited to have you. You have been a star in my eyes for years. And so we're really happy to have you talk a little about your life. As Stephanie mentioned, today's topic of conversation, we really want to connect with folks around their experience during the pandemic, how they were staying connected and being outdoors during the pandemic, and even now as we emerge from the pandemic, what folks are doing and how folks are looking at life. It's been an interesting time for a lot of folks. We at CivSalon, we've been really cognizant of helping folks think about how to stay healthy during this time, how to stay active. And I think you are a person who kind of embodied all that. But tell us, starting off, tell us a little about yourself and how are you doing today?
Well, I'm actually good. Thanks for asking. Myself. This is something I just realized actually when I was talking with someone about being born in LA. I joke about I just realized I was conceived on the USC campus because my parents were grad students at the time living on campus. Although I am a dyed-in-the-wool Bruin, so it's kind of like a disconnect right there. But there's SC and UCLA, and what is more LA than belonging to either school? So I was born here, and my parents, after grad school and after working here, decided they wanted to go back to the Philippines for a while and work there. They just felt that, sadly, because of discrimination and all of that, they felt that they would do better in the Philippines. So they took me back with them because they weren't about to leave me behind. And so I lived there for about a dozen years. And when it came time for me to go to college, we decided that a college education back in the United States would be better. So I packed up, left my family at home, and came here on my own, went to college, and basically never went back home. I don't think my parents expected that to happen. They always thought I'd go to college and go back home, and it never did happen. And as it turns out, I had such a great time here that my sisters decided they were going to come back too. So eventually, when they got to college age, they all came back. And so basically, we're all here.
Did your parents move back as well?
No, my father did so well in the Philippines. He was a well-known landscape architect, and so he stayed there. My mother came here for a while my sisters were in college, just to help out, and then eventually went back home. Sadly, both of them have passed by now, so they're no longer around. Um, that's it.
That's
Life for me is LA.
an amazing story, a very LA story. I find, so many of our stories here have roots or tendrils into other countries, and really helps inform our lifestyle and our culture here in many different ways. One of the things that makes me excited about living in our city. So that's really great to hear. So the pandemic life. Tell us how you passed time during the pandemic.
Well, the funny thing is, right before the pandemic, I was a very active person, a very outside person. I mean, as you know, I think I've been to all ciclavias except one, and that's because I was out of town. So I was always out and about, and I'm on my bike, and so the outside life was basically me. In fact, I do the marathon crash ride. For people who've never heard of it. It's because the LA Marathon at one time had a bike ride associated with it, and they took it away when they changed it to point from Dodger Stadium to Santa Monica, that a group of cyclists said, well, we still want to ride it. So since the route was closed, we would hop on the course at about 4 o'clock in the morning, ride it all the way to the end in Santa Monica before the cops kicked us out, as they had to have it ready for the runners. So the funny thing about it is that we had done that in March, and like the week after was the shutdown. And so all of a sudden, what am I going to do? Where are the bike rides? Where are the group bike rides? Where is Ciclavia? What are we going to do? So at the time, I had a part-time job, and because the pandemic cut down my hours even more because everybody was asked to stay home, I thought, well, what am I going to do now? I mean, I work for 4 hours a day. What am I going to do with the rest of my day? So I decided that, well, this is the time to do all the bike rides that I thought I wanted to do, but couldn't do because I was working. And so that was basically what happened. As soon as I, turned off my laptop, I was off on my bike, going different places around the city. And
Tell me about that. What was that like?
I always felt that I needed a goal, a reason to do the bike ride. And I'm not one of those people that says, well, I'll just ride to the top of the Santa Monica Mountains and come back down. I mean, that's not me. So it ended up being a journey to go get food, because this is when restaurants were closing and people were hurting. And I thought, why don't I do this a 2-for-1? I get my exercise and I can support the businesses that are staying open and keep them open. So especially the places that I used to go to, it's like, as long as I feel like I'm giving them my business, maybe they'll stay open. And so it was kind of like for me, for them. And so I would just research, what did I feel like eating today? Where can I go to get it? So I just wasn't staying within my little neighborhood of Santa Monica. I think in the beginning I did, because I wasn't quite sure they were saying stay home. What does stay home mean, and what happens when they find you 20 miles away from home? So I was doing a lot of the local stuff, but eventually when I found out that as long as you were socially distanced, it wasn't so bad. And as long as you were being, smart about it and safe about it, it wasn't so bad. So then I'd go out. I mean, I would go to the east side, I would go to the valley, I would go to the South Bay, as long as I had a goal of what I wanted to eat and where I wanted to go, and had a general route planned out, how I was going to get there and how I was going to get back. That was basically what I did for however long we were locked down. I guess we're not anymore. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. How did you prepare for some of those long rides?
Well, the thing is, I'd been doing long rides anyway. I had been doing fundraiser bike rides, like climate ride. I'd done that 3 or 4 times. I had done Finish the Ride, which is a ride that Damon Kevitt had started out, just to bring awareness to the fact that, we need safer streets, and unfortunately we need to raise money and we need money to bring about, awareness to safer streets. So I was used to doing bike rides of around, 50 miles and up in one shot. So, 50 miles in LA will pretty much get you to the LA border, however you go, right? North, south, east, west. 50 miles is LA County. Um, so that was it. And then I also realized that as far as trying to find out food, there were different organizations that were trying to bring awareness to the fact that we needed to support our local businesses. So there was a group called Regarding Her, and what they wanted to do is bring awareness to all these women-owned businesses. It's bad enough that they're at a disadvantage normally, but in the pandemic, it was even harder for them to stay afloat. So I brought up their list and says, I'm going here, I'm going there, wherever they were, I went there. And there was also the whole Black Lives Matter movement about, well, Black-owned businesses. And so I was going to Black-owned restaurants. So going to Inglewood, I was going to Leimert Park, I was going, I think the farthest I went was Long Beach, maybe. North Hollywood. There might have been some near Pasadena, but it was, a reason to get out and support the people out there.
That's amazing. I remember the Regarding Her work and all the great businesses they were highlighting, and of course, all the work around Black lives during the time. There's all great emphasis. So much great energy in Leimert Park during that time as well, along similar lines. But I look at you. You talk about these 50-mile rides, and I ride my bike a lot, and you say that to me, that intimidates me when you say that. But you don't. I look at you. You don't look like. I don't think I've ever seen you wear spandex. I think I've generally seen you only wearing regular clothes for the most part. And you don't. I'm not gonna. You're not the most athletically built person like walking around with huge buff calves or nothing like that. So I'm curious, like, do you consider yourself a professional biker? Because you sound like a professional biker, but do you consider yourself a professional biker? And how did you get into biking in that kind of way? How did you grow to be able to do these 50-mile rides?
I guess you'd say a little at a time, because, like most people, when you hop on a bike, the thing you most worry about are the cars on the road, right? Oh my God, it's me on a bike and this car. So it's just like every day you ride a little bit farther, and then you realize you sort of have to get into the mindset of drivers and what they're looking at and what they're looking for and what you look like in relation to them. I mean, I do own a car, so I know what it's like. And so you just have to ride smartly. And the thing is also, because I was doing all these fundraising bike rides, we had training rides. And so you just learn to ride farther and ride more hills and ride faster, and sort of like be able to just, the way I look at it, I say, I just pray every time I'm on the road, that I survive another day. Sadly, this is how LA is, but, I think it happens all over the country. We're hearing about people in Texas getting hit by cars, and so it's just the way it is. Sad to say. I mean, the reason why I ride a bike mainly is for the environment, and mainly because I think it started during the recession when I lost my job and I realized I don't have to pay for gas. I don't have to pay for parking. I don't have to pay for all that stuff. I have a bicycle, and that's the only expense you have. So it just made a whole lot of sense. And it was good for my health too. You get to exercise and it's free. I think you just got muted. There you go.
No worries. I got it. Thanks. During the pandemic, did it feel any different to bike around the city versus how it felt to bike around the city before the pandemic, or even now as we reemerge? Like, did it feel different? You speak about the cars and whatnot, and and praying. Did you feel like you had to pray as much when you were riding during the pandemic?
God, no, it was wonderful. In fact, I was hoping that everybody would just get on a bike and bike. It was like cyclovia every day, almost. I mean, there were some cars out there, but it was just a fraction of what's normally out there. And so, I mean, I purposely rode on the major streets that I would avoid because there was nobody out there. I mean, you'd have me on Olympic Boulevard, Wilshire Boulevard, Sepulveda Boulevard. It's like, and there's like one car that goes by and another car, and it was great. I mean, I could get places faster, seriously.
Did you see a lot of other bicyclists?
I saw some, but not as many as I thought I'd see, considering how bike shops kept saying that they were out of bikes and people couldn't buy bikes. And so people were taking their bikes out of their garages and trying to get them fixed. And because so many cyclists were trying to get their bikes fixed, that there was like a 2-week wait for service at bike shops. It was amazing. But they're really, I mean, that would have been the chance for people to learn how to ride a bike in the city when there aren't cars out. And then as the cars started reemerging, and then, you get used to it. And now I think it's back to, being horrendous like it was before the lockdown. Yeah.
How did you deal with it sounds like you managed to be outdoors, and you managed to stay somewhat connected still to, the outdoors and to people during the pandemic. But how did you yourself deal with any isolation you felt? I know it sounds like you rode alone most of these bike rides, huh?
I did. And, while I consider myself an outgoing person, I kind of liked being alone all that time. For one thing, if you're biking alone, you don't have to worry about, am I late for meeting up with a person? Am I early? Do I have to kill time while waiting for this person to show up? I mean, when I felt like going, I just went. And then when I was done, I was done. No excuses. If I planned to ride, 40 miles and I got lazy and decided to do this just 20, that was fine, because it was just me. It's great.
Did the bike riding itself help with the isolation, you feel?
Yeah, because honestly, when you're biking around the city, there are things that you notice that you wouldn't normally know. You wouldn't normally see. Like a lot of the things I saw were like the artwork on the buildings, the murals. If you're going really fast, they just zip by, right? You miss them. But when you're just taking your time, stopping when you see something interesting, you learn more about your city that way, I found.
Totally. It's like the vision of Ciclavia on some levels, right? I remember looking at your some of your information about you, and I'm realizing like, oh, I didn't realize you do yoga. You do a lot of yoga, right?
I actually did before the lockdown. I was pretty much doing yoga every day. And for me, that meant going to yoga studios. And part of the thing too, the goal of riding my bike was to get to yoga studios on bike. And there was a time where I was trying to get to every yoga studio in LA. And that's when I started blogging about all the yoga studios and all the kinds of yoga that were in LA. And I thought it was wonderful because we were a big community of people, like-minded people who are in it for our health and for, just learning more about ourselves and, just getting all centered. And it was good. And the thing is, at the time I was a runner, so it helped me with the flexibility, so that I wouldn't get as injured. And it helps with cycling, obviously, too.
You take yoga only, or you teach it as well?
I don't. No, I did not teach it, which was interesting because people used to say that I took so much yoga, I might as well teach it. But I said, no, I like taking it from people. I like being the student.
And did you do any yoga during the pandemic?
Not much. I'm not a person who likes
the virtual yoga is pretty big.
I know. I don't like doing the Zoom yoga thing. It's just, for me, I don't feel the connection with the teacher. No. So I just focused on cycling pretty much. Yeah.
That makes sense. So talk more about, you are quite the foodie. I know you love food. And when I watch your Instagram, I'm always like, oh, I'm hungry. Where's that at? Where's that at? And you often ask me questions like, where's that you eat? Where are you eating at?
I know.
So what excites you about exploring food, particularly here in Los Angeles? What do you find special about food in Los Angeles?
Well, the nice thing about LA is we're such a melting pot. If you think about all the neighborhoods that are, like you have Chinatown, Koreatown, Little Tokyo, you have, little smaller places with different kinds of food. Filipino towns. I mean, there's not just one, but there are many all over the city. Mexican food, obviously. So it's all over. And so where else are you going to get such a wide variety of food that's cooked like they cooked it back home, back from the motherland? So this is another thing I did, go there specifically and find the places that were like the mom and pops where they cooked it the way they ate it when they were growing up. And obviously we couldn't fly anywhere anyway. So, I mean, I couldn't travel. So why not, if you can't travel out of the country, why not travel within the city where you live? Since you can find it anyway.
So tell us about some of your favorite places to eat in LA.
Oh my gosh. I remember, well, the thing is, I'm partly pescatarian. I say I'm pescatarian 99% of the time, but if I find some meat that really grabs me, I'll do it just because it's there. And I do it more for cultural reasons, I guess, more than anything else. But I remember when the list of Black-owned businesses went out, my goal then was to try to eat as much food from Africa as I could, like, Ethiopian food and Nigerian food. And there was just so much of it out there that I never thought of trying. But because it was so easy to bike to them, no matter how far they were, I did. And it was great. I mean, I'd show up and just thank them for being open. Like, thank you so much for feeding me. This is wonderful food that I normally wouldn't eat. And so there was, the whole, African goal of trying to find that, and Asian, obviously. I don't think I did too much European food because that's something that, I guess people, there's the Italian food, the French food, but I didn't really go much into that. And then there was also the Filipino food, just trying to find all Filipino restaurants in LA. They're scattered all over the place. There's Carson, there's Panorama City, there is Glendale. There's obviously, historic Filipino town, downtown. So there was a lot of that. It kept me busy, very busy. And it also gave me a reason to ride, because if I'm eating this much food, I need to burn it off. And so I was on my bike.
Well, as a pescatarian, what's one of your favorite Filipino spot recommendations?
Well, that's hard because Filipino food is all pork and chicken and fried pork and fried chicken. So, I got really excited when I'd find places that had, like tofu or vegetables. And I'm trying to think, like, recently, one place I went to was Hi-Fi Kitchen in historic Filipino town. They actually had, vegetarian versions of Filipino food, which is great. A lot of times then, you go to Filipino restaurants and you have to eat, pork or chicken, or you eat a side of vegetables. So, I'll do it because it's traditional food, but I get really excited when I find, I remember Grand Central Market, they had eggplant, so that was good too. I think Petit Pesto in downtown, I think, had something, although I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. But they do a few vegetarian takes on Filipino dishes. Yeah.
Real cool. Well, I want to mind you a little bit on the food tip. Just comes top of your mind. What is one of your favorite spots to bike to in LA? And we're gonna do this a couple times, so you may as well queue a few up. I want people to get some ideas about what places they should be visiting.
Ooh. Well, for me, I try to get to places that are at least 10 miles away from home, just because I feel 20 miles is a good, nice round number. 10 miles to get there, 10 miles to get back. So Lemert Park was one of my favorites because they have this street scene, especially now on the weekends, where you have music and you have, pop-up vendors. And so, it's always changing. I go maybe once a month, and every time I'll find a new vendor out there, try something new. You have Jamaican food, you have soul food, you have, well, what Hot and Cool Cafe is like a vegetarian place, I think. So they've, vegan desserts. It's like, whoa, this is good stuff. Asla Ethiopian is right around the corner there too. They used to be in downtown, and then during the pandemic, they moved to Limert.
They're vegan. They're vegan.
They're vegan. They have awesome food. So I can go there and be vegan. It's a thing now, to find vegan food, and so that's a good place to go.
If you're downtown, where would you go?
That's what I'm trying to think. Oh, Burger Lords. Burger Lords is a vegan burger place. They're awesome. The trick is you order in advance so that it's ready when you get there. So for me on bike, it's hard for me to plan, like, how long is it going to take me to get there? Oh, I remember there's a place in Chinatown called Wax Paper. Now they're not vegan, but every Thursday they would have the vegetarian sandwich special. And they close at 3:00 in the afternoon. So I could do them when I had the part-time job. As I was leaving the job, I'd say, okay, I'm going to be there in an hour and a half. Please have the sandwich ready for me in an hour and a half. And they were so nice. They would do it. And a lot of times they were about to close when I got there, and they'd have the sandwich ready for me and be really happy to see me. So every other Thursday, they would have their vegetarian sandwich special.
How about the West Side? How about the West Side? How about the West Side?
West Side. Well, the West Side, we're known to be, crunchy granola yogis, right? So there's always the vegetarian stuff out here. I think it's because being a West Sider, I was so used to eating locally that I always set my sights outside the West Side because it was different, and they were places that I wouldn't normally go to. Now that I'm back working full time, now I'm finding myself back on the West Side because I don't really have much time to go out late at night. So I find myself on Sawtell a lot. And the Sawtell scene is just incredible. I remember during the lockdown, it was so quiet. Some places had closed, some places closed early, some places opened late. But they were always there. You had the Chinese food, the Japanese food, I think the Vietnamese food. There was the one Filipino place, but now, so it was Big Boy, was Filipino. Spoon and Pork just opened up. They used to be on Sunset and Silver Lake, and they opened up branch on Sawtell. But Sawtell is my favorite just because there's always something I can find, not to mention, boba tea almost in every block. Or let me see, where else would I go? I'm trying to think. Main Street, the Main Street scene keeps changing, so it's hard to know. Brentwood, San Vicente, it's the usual thing. You either have upscale places, and I really do not like spending a whole lot of money on my food. So, if it's one of those places like $20 dinners, I usually pass. Then there are a lot of chain places there too. I guess Sawtell and Santa Monica Boulevard are basically where I find myself on the West Side. Every now and then I might go to Clementine in Century City because, well, that was one of the woman-owned places and they were really nice. So I would go there and support them. Culver City has turned into a really nice place, especially since they closed down the street to cars on one side of Washington and opened it up to dining. So it's become a really nice place to go, especially if you're on bike or you like dining outside. Main Street in Washington.
Yeah, they have a great little Jamaican spot in that area.
Yes, they do. Right there, right by the farmers market.
I think it's called Django's, I want to say.
Something like that. I can't remember the name. Yeah, it's right across the street from the steps. It's a brand new development. I don't know if you call it development. It's like a building. And it has like a salt and straw ice cream, which I believe has vegan options.
And just so that we don't sound too biased to the city center area, what about on some of the outlying areas of our region? What are some of the spots you biked up to out in those areas that you love?
Highland Park, Eagle Rock. That's awesome. Let me see. Pasadena has always been a place for food.
What's a food spot? What's a food spot in Pasadena you love?
Oh my God, there was one called Mama Musubi. where again, it was a woman-owned business, and I biked all the way there. I think she used to have a stand at the South Pasadena Farmers Market, but she had to close when they shut down all the farmers markets. So she opened up in one of these ghost kitchens. But I think I saw her recently at Smorgasburg. I think. Where did I see her? Or did she open up a stall again? I can't remember. But that was the thing, just, finding what was out there. I think the problem with going all the way out to Pasadena is if businesses closed early. I'm a late morning person. So by the time I get out there, they'd be pretty much closing, which was kind of sad. And Valley, there's a lot in the Valley.
Please.
A lot of mom and pops and really good ethnic food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's one of your favorites?
Oh, gosh.
I'm gonna put you on the spot every time.
It's like, who's open right now? I remember going to North Hollywood recently, trying to go to Filipino restaurant just to find out they were closed. It's like, oh my God, this is so sad. But where would I go?
I know Vin Lao Tofu is one of my favorites out that way.
For sure. For sure, on Reseda.
Yeah, Reseda. It's where our Ciclovia went right by there, and I stopped by recently. They're still open, and great food, all vegan, great Asian food.
Yeah. It's hard for me to remember where I've been because I've been to so many places. Oh, I wanted to say, you mentioned Ciclovia. The last Ciclovia before the shutdown was, I think, in February, right? That was the South LA in 2020. At the end of the year, I decided that I'd missed Ciclovia. So I did something crazy. What I did is I got all the routes that were canceled, combined them all, and turned it into one long bike ride.
Oh,
so I had
that's amazing.
So I had the heart of LA, I had the Glendale Atwater, I had the Valley, what was that, like maybe Pacoima, Panorama City. So I merged them all and made sure that I ate at each of the places. And I think my goal was to do Filipino food at each one of them. So I went to downtown and went to Petit Peso. Then I went to Glendale Atwater, and I found a little place called, what was it called? Like Manila Market or something like that. What it was is he was a guy that had a business in Eagle Rock Plaza, but because of the shutdown, the whole mall closed down. So he tried to find another place. So he set up shop in Glendale, and I happened to stop by like maybe their first day open or something like that. And they were really nice. They said, okay, can you cook something for me that isn't meat? And they ended up making eggplant, a tortang talong, which is basically eggplant in egg, and they fry it. And so they made that specially for me. It wasn't even on their menu. And they served it over rice. And I took that with me. And then, of course, when you go up to Panorama City, there's nothing but Filipino food out there. So I forgot where I went, but I found something. And then after all of that, then I had to bike down to Sepulveda Pass to get all the way back home. So that was a long day and a long ride.
So this is all in the bike ride of all of the Ciclovia routes that have been canceled in 2020. This is the same ride. How long did that ride take you?
I don't know, because I kept stopping, so I can't, it's hard to know. I started maybe at about, 10 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't get home till maybe 8 o'clock at night. And then I did a separate one for the South LA that would have happened in December. So remember, I was asking you, like, where would it be? Where should I go?
I do remember sending you the route for that. Yes.
Yeah. And so I did that, and I ended up in downtown LA, and I think I ended up eating Lemert because it was close enough.
Because why not?
Yeah. So,
that's an amazing adventure.
Crazy things.
Yeah, that is an amazing adventure. So, all right. So food life and biking around the city and food and stuff. I mean, it almost seems like your life didn't necessarily change all that much during the pandemic, but obviously we all were impacted, but now things are kind of returning. And as things start to reemerge and events start to come together again, I'm curious, like, how has your life returned since, things have started reopening? How have things changed for you?
Oh, yeah. Well, the thing is, because like I say, I have a full-time job now, I can't write as much as I used to. So all my writing is now on the weekends. So again, I have to figure out like how far do I want to ride? What do I want to do? There was a question that the chat I thought was really interesting, and I want to answer that because it kind of
Yeah,
ties in with what we're
please
talking
do.
about. It was about bike theft.
Yeah.
And this is a big issue with me. I've had a bike stolen off the front of a metro bus. This happened maybe 5 years ago because they said you can't lock your bike to the rack in front. So I didn't. And they said, just sit in front, keep an eye on it. Well, I did. And it so happened we had stopped and you had all these people who boarded the bus at the same time, and I couldn't see out the window. And while they were standing there blocking the window, somebody had stolen my bike off the front. I noticed it when I saw the handlebars go up, and I ran to the door. And as I ran to the door, he had put it down, hopped on it, and took off. I'm on foot. There's just no way I could chase after him. So I'm really paranoid about my bike and on transit. So a lot of times now I put it on, the train because I can sit right by my bike. And if I do put it on the front of the bus, I make sure I lock the frame to the wheel. So if anybody does take it off, they can't go very far because the wheels won't turn. They can try to run with my bike, but I don't have a very light bike. So they'll stop at some point in time because they're tired of carrying a 30-pound bike. Yeah. The other thing is when everything was closed, nobody could walk into the stores, right? So a lot of times they took your order at the door. So you stood at the door, you placed your order, you walked away, and you came back when your order was ready. So what I do is my bike was always with me. I never had to lock up my bike. If I ever got to a place where they say, sorry, you can't take your bike in, I'll say, sorry, I can't come in. Sorry, I'm just not locking up my bike, especially at the time when you couldn't even buy a bike. So if my bike were stolen, I couldn't buy a replacement. So why would I want to risk losing my bike? So that's pretty much how it goes. And I got so used to not locking up my bike that I'm still in that mindset right now. Like if I can't bring my bike into the business or leave it in a safe place, I'm sorry, I just can't. Also, what I did recently is I bought a folding bike. And I found that the good thing about the folding bike is you fold it up, and a lot of businesses will let you, wheel it in. So that's what I've been doing. Like if I go to the supermarket, well, not maybe Trader Joe's will let me do it. I haven't tried it at Whole Foods yet. I haven't tried it at the Ralph's yet. A lot of times now, if I want to go to the grocery store, I'll just walk. Then I don't have to deal with locking up a bike because I'm walking.
Before
And I'll just, yeah.
before the pandemic, though, before you got used to washing your bike outside personally because of business not letting you inside, before the pandemic, you were riding to businesses, but you were never locking your bike up outside during that period
no.
either?
I was
Yeah.
locking them up with two locks. I'd lock the front wheel and the frame with one lock and the back wheel to the frame with another lock, and take everything off the bike. And that was the problem, just to get off your bike, you had to take the light off, you had to take, your pannier off, you had to take anything that anybody'd want to steal off the bike, because chances are somebody would buy and steal it. It was a pain. And so I kind of got used to the convenience of not having to lock up a bike.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. So now I have to go back to, locking everything back up again.
Yeah, and some thoughts I have on this subject. The 2-point locking is always a really good idea. Making sure what you're locking to is very secure, and identifying businesses. Did you ever think about that when you were looking for restaurants before you got there? Like, oh, is my bike going to be locked? Can I lock my bike up somewhere there? Did you ever call them and check and that kind of thing? I'm just curious, like your process in terms of identifying restaurants.
Usually I assumed that there was no safe place to park a bike. So then it would be like, have to beg and plead, can I please bring my bike in because I don't trust leaving it outside. And that happens a lot. Or they'll say, oh, or you can just leave it here. Like you just park, leave it outside and, watch it. I said, no, you know how fast people can grab a bike and go? Like, no, I can't just let it sit there.
Yeah, you're locking the wheel to the frame idea is great for that, actually.
Yeah, but still, people can still grab and go. if it's not locked to something permanent, on something, attached to something, it's still easy to just grab and go. So yeah.
We had another question from Rachel Stone. She's really inspired by you, but she wondered about some tips you might have for building up your confidence level when riding through high traffic areas.
That gets me. Okay, so one of these high traffic areas that I like to ride through is Wilshire Boulevard. I like to take Wilshire to downtown, partly because there's a bus lane and bikes can share the bus lane with buses, and bus drivers, for the most part, are really respectful of cyclists. A lot of times they'll go around me if I'm in the bus lane. Thing about Wilshire Boulevard is because they are working on the purple line right now. There's sections that are where the bus lane no longer exists and they have to get back with the regular traffic. So I find that a lot of times, especially LA, since it's legal, I'll ride on the sidewalk. It's just, self-preservation. When you realize there are too many cars out there and you could get in their way because they don't care, then I get on the sidewalk. If it's early in the weekend and there aren't a lot of cars, then I'll just pray that, yeah, I'm on one lane, you can have the other lane, That's how it goes. I mean, I've been honked by cars who say, you're in my way. Why are you in the lane? But, these people just don't understand that bicycles are vehicles and we have as much right to the road as they do. Which is why I have a problem with Sharrows. Sharrows markings, I found that a lot of drivers don't know what they are. These are the bike icons that you see on the road that aren't bike lanes. And the point is, cars are supposed to know that cyclists come through here and this is where they're going to be. In fact, they paint them supposedly where they want you to ride because it avoids the door zone for parked cars. And yet, it's in the road. And a lot of times I'll ride there and cars will honk at me and say, move over, you're in my way. It's like, I'm sorry, this is where I'm supposed to be. And this, so when it's a road where I get pushback a lot and I realize it's not worth fighting them, then I'll move over. But if I think that, I feel safe enough and cars are used to seeing cyclists there, then I'll do it, but a lot of times I'll listen for cars behind me. I'm constantly listening for cars. If I hear a big truck behind me, I might move over because I don't know where he's going or how fast he's going. But I'll try to pay attention to what's back there. Yeah.
That's a great tip. That's a great
Well,
tip.
the other thing too is, there's side streets. The thing to do is you realize that a lot of these main streets have side streets that parallel them. So sometimes that's a good option, especially if there are lights at major crossings. Like, for example, Vermont. Vermont is one of the streets I just won't ride on because I know that New Hampshire is right beside it. So I'll take New Hampshire. Another street might be Western. Western is a real bad street bike on until you get to the South Bay. And then all of a sudden there's this wonderful, Vermont and Western have these wonderful bike lanes if you go south of downtown. Although sadly, not many of us need to be out there, but when I do, it's great. So yeah.
That's great. You looking for those key corridors where they have the side streets. I agree. Some of those back streets are great ways to get around regions of the city and avoiding all the traffic and allow you to have much more comfortable ride. And you can avoid all the air pollution and the noise pollution and just have kind of a nice sort of back. And, in LA back streets, nice houses, tree lined. I don't find them to be bad rides at all. In certain neighborhoods, it makes it a lot safer and more convenient to get around them on bike.
In fact, related to that is, Venice Boulevard has a bike lane, but I found that I really don't like riding Venice Boulevard despite the bike lane. Partly because there are just so many cars and so many people coming out of driveways and so many distractions. In fact, it's happened a number of times. I'm coming down the bike lane and there's a car coming from the opposite direction trying to make a left turn. And he's watching for cars, he's not watching for cyclists. So I've been cut off a few times by these cars turning left, even if I am in a bike lane, because they're not looking out for me. So I've found other alternatives that I feel are safer or less stressful. And a lot of them are in residential areas.
Yeah, that's you know, it's good feedback to hear about it. And then we had another question about does using Google Maps help you pick safer street routes? Yeah, it does.
I
It works
use
pretty well for me
that a
too.
lot. Yeah. In fact, I found a lot of good residential neighborhoods thanks to Google Maps.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you're coming from a car culture where you're driving around, you know that you take the freeway, you know that you take these streets to get around. But Google Maps has some interesting ways of getting you around that avoids these streets. Of course, there was one time I remember I wanted to go to Echo Park. I think it was Echo Park from Santa Monica. And it sent me on this street somewhere in Silver Lake, I think it was. That was like a straight up pitch like this. I'm thinking, like, who the heck would do this?
Right.
Oh my God. If I had an electric bike, maybe I would, but no. No.
How long ago was that?
It was just this year, I think.
This year? I was curious because I feel like Google's pretty good with the elevation too, because they actually give you elevation information in their directions, but sometimes it still makes those mistakes. The computer, you know, can't trust.
You know, sometimes it says, oh, this route is relatively flat. I'm saying relatively flat for whom? You know, this is not flat. This is an uphill. But, you know, thanks to all the training I did for all the rides I did, I can tackle hills. That hill was particularly gnarly. I mean, that might have been a 14% grade. I don't know. It was ridiculous. I actually got off my bike and said, you know what? Do I want to walk this or do I want to go around it? And I think one time I walked it, and then another time I said, okay, this is crazy. I'll just ride around it.
Totally.
And find my way around it. Yeah.
Speaking of your training for those big rides, do you have any big events coming up now that life's returned? Is there a climate ride coming up, or LA? Isn't the marathon's happening this weekend? Isn't it? Are you are you going to the crash ride?
No, I'm actually doing the marathon this time.
Oh, you're doing the marathon. Wow.
Yeah. Before I got into cycling, I was a marathon runner. I used to run. I ran LA. I think I ran LA at least 7 times before I realized there has to be marathoning life other than the LA Marathon. So I started going out of state to do it, to the point where I decided I was going to run a marathon in every state. And so I was traveling around the country running marathons. And then it got expensive. And when the recession hit, I said, I can't be spending my money traveling the country to run marathons. So I kind of put that on hold. I'm kind of on the fence about whether I'll pick it up, because I only have, I think I have 16 states to go. It's like, God, so close. So I don't know, we'll see. But anyway, the last time I ran the LA Marathon was 10 years ago. And I decided that I had a friend who was running it and wasn't prepared for it, and he said he'd walk it. I said, well, if you're walking it, I'll walk it with you. So I signed up, and it's this Sunday.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You ready for it?
Crazy.
It should be amazing. I'm sure you're going to do well.
Well, this is the first one after the shutdown too. So they're, implementing all these safety things about you have to have a mask while you're waiting around in your corral. You have to show your vaccine card. If you're not vaccinated, you have to show a test within 72 hours. If you show up with neither a COVID card or a test, they have testing on site. If you don't want to be tested, well, they won't let you run. So that's basically it. That's the rule.
Oh,
I mean, it's not going to stop you from, I'm sorry?
A lot of flexibility in there, it seems like.
Yeah, but then again, it's not going to stop anybody from jumping in mid-route and just running it. Although, they're really good about having timing chips on you, so they'll know when you started, where you started, points along the way. So if you don't start at the start and end at the finish, you didn't really do the marathon. You won't get credit for having done it.
Completed the marathon. So
yeah.
hop-ins won't have the same experience anyway. So
yeah.
And it sounds like it's going to be an amazing day. I remember, like you said, right before the pandemic, we had the marathon right before.
Right.
And so it's exciting that it's coming back to Los Angeles, one of LA's other big experiences and events.
Yeah.
Are you doing a climate ride coming up?
I signed up for one next year.
And describe what the climate ride is for folks, because now I'm sure not everyone knows what a climate ride is.
Yeah, there's actually a group called Climate Right, and the whole idea behind Climate Right is to bring attention to the fact that, we are in a climate crisis, and, and everything that means, whether it be the storms out in the East Coast and the wildfires in California and the melting polar ice caps and all of that. It's all because of what we are doing. Primarily carbon emissions and driving in cars and all of that. So we're on bikes and we're biking just to show that there are other ways of getting around. And they started out with bikes, and now they're doing hiking, and they're doing other things that don't involve actually being in a car, and seeing more of not just the country, but now they're going global. They have things in Europe, things in South America. I haven't been keeping track of those too much because I'm trying to stay local right now. So the climate ride, what I've done is Northern California. We start out in the redwoods, and we pretty much ride following the coast and end up in San Francisco, crossing the Golden Gate Bridge, which is cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
And finishing in San Francisco. So that was the first one I did.
How many miles was that?
That was about 300 something miles, broken into like 5 days, I think. So you're averaging about 60 miles a day. There was one day
you ride for 60. Sorry, just want to
Yeah.
make sure, this is an experience that not everybody's had in their life. So you ride for 60 miles in a day, and then you you sleep somewhere, and then you wake up and you ride 60 miles more, and then you sleep somewhere, and then you ride 60 miles more until you continue to do that until you get to your destination.
Yeah, we're riding into campgrounds. I mean, people have probably heard of the AIDS ride, so it's similar. So you bring a tent, you bring a sleeping bag, you bring your stuff, you throw it in a truck. So while you're biking, the truck is carrying your stuff, right? And it meets you at the campground. So you can get to the campground, you pitch your tent, you grab your stuff, you pitch your tent. They feed you, which is really nice, and the food is really good.
I bet it's kind of critical.
It's very, yeah. So, they do have stops along the way too while you're doing your 60-mile ride, right? So there'll be a lunch stop, and there'll be breakfast at the campground, obviously, a lunch stop, and then dinner at the campground. And then you can load up on stuff. So they have all kinds of stuff, and you can carry it on you, snack bars and cookies and candy, whatever it is that you want. And then lunch. They'll provide lunch, and you can refill your stuff. You can refill your water bottles, whatever. And also you're riding through towns, so you can stop and visit, the towns and pick up stuff. I mean, obviously they have time checkpoints. You have to be here by this time, or they're going to have to sag you in because they don't want to leave anybody out. So, riding through the redwoods on a bicycle is an awesome experience. You can just imagine you're just riding, and it was just you and the trees and people that you're with. And I remember the year I did it, there was a light drizzle coming through, so it's like, whoa, am I going to get drenched? But it was actually, it just made it all kind of magical because there was just this mist while you're riding through. Yeah. And then the next year I went from San Francisco to San Luis Obispo. And the whole point is you were going to go through Big Sur, and you can just imagine what the California coast would have looked like. Yeah. But that was the year that I think there was a rainstorm and a mudslide, and they had to shut down part of Highway 1.
Yeah.
So they rerouted, and this just came like a month before the ride. So we were rerouted from Carmel inland, and we ended up in Paso Robles. So you're riding through wine country, which was just an amazing thing too. It was kind of hot. It wasn't the coast, but once we got to Paso Robles, we came out to San Luis Obispo, and we were done. That was actually a harder ride than we expected it to be because of all the the mountains inland.
Right. The detour probably was more grades, more up and down. So yeah.
Definitely, but because you were riding with people who were in the same situation, you were all, basically commiserating together. And then the next time I did a Pacific Northwest one where we started out in Seattle, and we had to ride through the islands the San Juan Islands, and we hopped on ferries to get there and rode around the islands and camped on islands and, ferried to another island and camped there. And it was just beautiful. And because it was a small group, we got to know each other, especially when we were on the ferries together. We got to tell stories and all of that. And of course, they provided the food.
That's amazing.
There was one ride I remember where we took the ferry. We actually crossed the Canadian border, so we had to take our passports with us. When I say flashlights, passports. So we went to Victoria, and then we took the ferry to Port Angeles, and there is a road that goes up to the top of the Olympic National Mountains, and called Hurricane Ridge. And there's one day a year where they shut it down. No cars are allowed, so anybody on bike, foot, whatever you wanted could go all the way to the top and not have to worry about cars. So they timed it perfectly. So we landed at Port Angeles on that day. So we had the option to ride up 5,000 feet to the top of the mountain and then come barreling back down. So I did that. So that was the challenge. I mean, you had all the beauty, then you had the challenge.
Those are some amazing experiences.
Yeah.
Imagine doing them on the back of your bike. It does sound quite magical.
And we had to raise money, and the money went to environmental organizations.
Right. There's a money. Sorry about that. There's a money raising element to all this, right? You're helping fundraise for nonprofits.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So cool. So many cool things coming up for you, and so many cool experiences you're about to be returned to. Is there any other activities you're looking forward to coming up?
Going back to yoga classes. Studios are starting to open up again, and many of them are requiring vaccination cards. So this gives me some kind of feeling of, safety as far as, passing around the virus, because the virus is still going around, unfortunately.
Yeah.
In fact, I was recently on a plane, and I was kind of worried about, am I going to have the angry passenger on the plane beating up on the flight attendants? Luckily, everybody behaved themselves. Everybody was masked and everything was good. And so far, knock on wood, I haven't gotten anything, so that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And you're right. I think we still have to be a little mindful, even as we sort of returning to activity. Luckily, things do look like they're going a little bit better and allowing us to do that. So any final thoughts for the audience? Any final things you want to share with folks after our conversation today?
I don't know. Are there any interesting questions? Oh my God, look at the time.
Yeah, we worked our way right through that time. We don't have any more time for questions. That's why I'm doing it.
Oh, I wanted to say that if you're noticing my background, this was taken up from Angel's Point, and I had biked to the top and took this photo myself.
Oh, see, for the fruits of biking labor.
Right. There are all these places that you can see that you normally wouldn't see. And if you were in a car, you probably drive to the top, hop out and take a picture and say, oh, okay, that was cool. But if you're riding it, you get to see all this stuff.
Well, I'll tell you, I can't think of any more amazing final thought than that. So I think we can wrap it on that. Thank you so much, Joni, for your time today, sharing your experience with folks. Very inspiring. I just want to remind folks that next month we have 2 more of these sessions. The next one coming up with Sui on November 18th.
Oh, Sui! I love Sui.
And next month, don't forget December 5th, Ciclavia, South LA. You can walk, bike, run, skate, play your day away in South Los Angeles with us. Go to our website, www.ciclavia.org for more information. Now I'll pass it back to Stephanie to close us out.
Thanks to Farai, and thanks, Joni. So I know that we were all really engaged with just the incredible amount of information that you shared with us, and just sharing your experience and sharing of yourself and who you are. I think a lot of people are leaving really inspired. You also have a couple of business ideas, Joni. I think folks want you to start a food blog. I think in the chat, Joni's bike tours, if you're ever looking for another encore career, I think you have a couple of suggestions but thank you for sharing yourself with us today. And I think even Marlu in the chat posted, thank you for your time and telling of your adventures. It was very fun and informative. And I think other chats included this was so awesome. So as Tafari said, thank you again for joining us. If you're interested, we're going to have these for the next couple of weeks. So the next one is November 18th, and I included the chat in the chat, the registration info. But thank you, Joni, for joining us today. And we'll be seeing you, if not at the next Ciclavia. Best of luck on the marathon, on walking the marathon. I mean, it's been incredible. And so I'm happy to see you hopefully in the next open streets, or even at Burger Lords, or even some of the incredible food places that suggestions that you gave. So thank you to you. Thank you to Farai for moderating this discussion. And everyone have a great day. Hopefully you'll join us for the next one. Bye.
Thanks, Tafari, Stephanie. See you soon.